Well, hi guys, hopefully this finds you very well. My name's Paul, this is Plan Z, and the church bells have just started ringing outside, so you might be able to hear that in the background if you're in headphones. Welcome to the session. This is the third session out of 20. There's going to be 2 parts per session. The first part we're working in drop D, and we're going through all of the amps. This is the third amp, this is the Vox. We've got 5 patches. We've got a patch 1 where we're using Dynamic IR's Two Notes Cab M for our dry and GT1000 for the wet. This is the medium gain. We're on about 9 of the gain pot. Let's go to the Boss version. So this is now GT1000 cabs. What we'll do is come into here. We'll start talking about the patch. Okay, so we're using GT1000 update 320 cabs, so the 212 4. On the left, I've got the cab split. So remember to marry up your left with your left and your right with your right when you do this. And I'm blending the mics myself. So I'm going ribbon 121, medium in the middle, and I'm just pulling back the volume to about 96. And then on this side, all the same with the cab, but the 57 in the middle, so the same, but 3 centimeters off center, and the level at 100. Okay. Now I normally run a wet dry where I separate out to 2 notes, but for this session I've set up, try to imagine that if you're using a GX or a Core and you're not working the way I am, or a GT, just imagine this is your main outs, okay? So what I do is on the main out EQ, just so you can understand fully what's going on. So I'm going to go to the sub out, but my main out's done the same. I take 1 off the lows, 1 off the highs, and then I take 1 dB of 2K on a Q of 2, and then I bump the level by 1. Okay. Now this is shaping the EQ curve. When we've got the EQ curve, it's fairly flat, right? So what I'm doing here is just taking a little bit at the bottom, a little bit out the tops, and then creating a hump, 2 humps like that, by creating a dip here and raising the level. Okay. So hopefully that made sense. I maybe should have done that on a piece of paper. It might have been a bit more obvious. But hopefully we'll get the concept. Now here, rather than running the wet dry, I'm doing a side chain. I won't talk too much about the wet here. I've just got a bit of a stereo compressor on a spring reverb where we've got control over the time using the expression switch. But what we should really focus on, being it's the amp deep dive, is the EQ set and the amps. So I did a little video a couple of weeks ago before I started these deep dives, just deep diving into EQ. So if you don't understand how a parametric EQ works, or some of the terms that I'm going to use in these videos, because I want to try and keep these videos short and not have to keep explaining it, what I'm going to do is go through the settings that I got through. But if you want to understand how to search around for those, if you don't know how to use a parametric EQ, I will link a link to a video below, which hopefully will help. Okay, so starting off with the low ends in a parametric EQ. Number 1, we're going to be cascading up the frequency chain. Okay, so we start off dealing with the lows, and there's no change on the first page. And I found I want to take out 160 a bit here because I'm bumping the lows at the other end. Okay. So I took out 160 here because I think it will be a problem in a live cabinet. But I might reduce that a little bit to 4 or 3, depending on how I feel when I get into a live cabinet, if that makes sense. This one, though, is definitely coming out to a tune of -6 on a Q of 16, so we're slicing it out, 250, and then I do the low cut to 125. Let me just adjust that microphone slightly. Then in the next EQ, we're dealing slightly higher up the frequencies now, so no change here. because what you find is by taking these frequencies out the way I am, you don't lose any level. You just get rid of problems, and you start to cut through a bit more. So here I'm dealing with the 315 the same way, 16 -6. And here, because I've dealt with the lows the way I have, I'm able to retain the meat around 500 and just take out specifically the honk. So we've got, in a medium gain and a low gain, I've got the EQ like this, but when I go to a high gain, so it makes a very subtle difference. In a mix, we'll really feel that. So, and this is the point. I'm kind of working in a live looping mix. So before we get to the amps, let's look at how I'm shaping things at this end. So what I've done is take a high cut to 4K. So it's quite an aggressive high cut. I'm taking out 315 surgically, -6, 16. Doing the same at 2.5 here in the Vox. Then boosting the highs to about 8, okay? Not boosting the level here, because this is actually boosting the level that we've cut, okay? And here, I'm just introducing a bit of lows. I just felt I wanted some extra low, okay? Which, you know, it's a Vox amp. Vox aren't famous for their lows. But just in comparing GT1000 cabs to Two Notes DynIR, I felt like it needed some extra lows. So now let's talk about this EQ here. And this EQ here is kind of shaping the amp. So I'm going to change to the Les Paul in a minute. We're currently on the telly, as I say. Let's take that off. So it's quite nice tone. So there's, you know, here's one Vox tone out of this patch. Let's go to the highs. Let's apply this EQ. Hopefully, if you're on headphones, what you heard happen to the distortion there is I just refocused it. What I've done is reshape how the highs are using the EQ, okay? So without the EQ, I get a tone that's got more highs and less low mids. So it's a slightly thinner tone, and when I go to a high gain, there's more highs to it, okay? But when I apply this EQ, I'm getting more low mids and a bit more punch in that low end. It still feels like I've got nice tops, but I haven't got all of the highs. Okay, so what I've done here is take the whole level of the EQ down by 2 dB, and when I do that, I've lost some lows and some highs. So I use these two knobs here, the low gain, the high gain, to bump them by the same amount that I've taken it down by, okay? Because I've bumped 800, so if this is the EQ line, I've put a bump down here in the low mids, and I've put another bump on a wider Q, but not quite as high, up in the higher mids, okay, to get some crispies back. So that's all that EQ there is doing, but I think it really helps. Definitely helps in a room. So what we're going to do now is just grab the Les Paul. Hopefully this guy's in tune. Now I just need to change my channel on the gig rig 321 where the instruments are connected. Let's go neck pickup. Let's go back pickup. So that sounded nice on here. Okay, so now we understand this patch. I should just tell you there's a treble boost in here, which I put down at the very front of my chain, so nothing's kind of getting in the way of it. Let's try that there. So that's there. We've also got a fuzz in here. Okay, so the fuzz, I've just got a 60s fuzz, no, octa fuzz, 120 on the gain, so we're going to use our gain pot with this. Got the tone, and the tone will change depending on the gain structure. So in the medium gain, I have the tone at around +7 at the moment for this tone, and in the low gain it drops to -3. So let's turn that on. Okay, so I've just dialed them in so they're more or less the same tone. And there you heard a little click when I changed amps, because I need to really put this in a divider. I'll have that done for the next session. Okay, so now we've dealt with the EQs and a couple of other bits. Let's just quickly look at this treble boost. We'll get into the amp. Treble boost, drive F20 in the middle, level around 70. Bottom left alone, 2 of the dry mix coming through, okay? But I put it before the EQs, those 2. If I was doing my drives, I generally tend to put a bit further up, okay? Now, the amp. Let's go to the low gain. So here, we've got the gain at 70. We're in the low gain. We've got the mids at about 66, the bass at 43, the treble at 65, and the presence, which is basically, think of that as your bright knob. So if we turn it all the way up, we lose all of our brightness, and when we turn it all the way down, we get our tops back. So I like to just kind of pull that back a bit. Until it's in a place where, when I'm not really looking at the number, I'm going to stay about there. Yeah, I'm going to stay about there. So I've got the sag in this one at 0. The resonance for all of the amps will be at 5. I like what it does to the shape of the mids and the highs. And the level here is at 70, gain at 70, all right? Let's go to the medium gain amp, where we've got the gain at 70 also. The sag gets bumped up a little bit to +3. Then we have the same resonance, but the level is at 60. Now the lows are at 30. The mids are around 66 again, I think that is. We've got the trebs at about 66 somewhere, 64, and the presence on 6. But when I hop to the high gain, so here we have we change the gain stage here. I drop the bass off a bit, I bump the mids, drop the trebs off a bit, and the presence gets cranked. I don't remember my Vox being that bright when I cranked it. Okay, so when I go to the high gain, I'm cranking the gain to 120 because we can, and I thought, you know what, let's see what happens. I actually prefer the tone of 100, so I'm going to do that now. So I'm going into my signs where I've got the amp settings for that amp. Gain. That's now on 100. When I press the button, it should just fly between there and there. Yeah, I definitely prefer that on 100. Okay, so that is what's happening with the 2 amps in this first session. That's how I've got them dialed in. and the effects that I've got with this first patch. Now the Two Notes patch is exactly the same, so what I'm going to do while I remember is just change the gain. So we're dealing with the same gain, and let me just check. Yeah, they're in the right place. So let's just save that. Okay, so now let's look at the second patch, which is actually going to be patch 4, where I've got the Vox set up with a Bindrum using the wet-dry system that I use. So we've got all the same EQ, same thing happening with the amps, a low gain with 2 other gain stages next to it. But this time I go out direct level only, line level to Two Notes cab amp, where we've got the Vox Voice 30 212EL 84 on. And then in my wets, when I engage it, we're going out to the GT1000 stereo linked, because I want a more even frequency spread on the wet. I've got the same cab selected though, the Vox ones, and I'm using the blend A in the middle in the center. All right. Now after that, I put a stereo compressor. If I'm working in stereo, if it's a mono patch, it'll be a mono compressor with these kind of mastering type settings. So it's very soft compression. I won't read the settings out, but there they are. So 1.6 to 1 is the ratio here. 30 of the dry mix coming through. We do bump the level there on the tone, and all that's do is just gluing things together. Okay. It's not a bump, but I can use it to bump or compress things for effect. And most of my wets will be set with this configuration, okay? So then, in this particular patch, what I've done is I've used a couple of divides to separate the reverb from the delay. So let's take the delay off and just hear the reverb on its own. And all we've got is a spring reverb there, okay? Doesn't do anything funky. There's the settings. Quite important to do your low and high cuts and then address your high and low damp. But I'll cover that when I do the in more depth in the reverb videos. Now then, let's engage this delay. So what I've done is to give us some spread. So just to show you can understand what I mean, I'm going to turn that to single and put this on stereo, and just put the delay time up a little bit on the delay, and you'll hear we're coming up the middle. But I wanted to spread it before, so I've gone left right here and dual, but on the mixer here I've only gone to about 30. All right, so now it's either side of us. All right, now the settings here are, I've done a fair bit to this. What we've got is we've got control over the time and the feedback using the expression foot pedal, okay? And when the heel is all the way back, it looks like that. And when the heel goes up, you can see both are growing until they max out, all right? So we've got control over the feedback and the time with the expression switch. But let's bring that back to here where we have those settings. Then I have set up another switch that will take the feedback from wherever I've got it on the foot switch and bump it to 100. So I can max out at whatever time I'm on here. Does that make sense? And then if I want to get out of it, I can just hit the switch again. Actually, if I'd left that a bit longer, you'd have heard that feedback coming in then. So, but we'll play with that in a minute. It goes back to 60, so it just will fade off. It will kill it. Okay? Now, the other switch in here I need to tell you about is dealing with, we're in swell mode, but we can change the heads. Okay, so what I'm doing is I've got, let's go, just give us a bit of feedback. So there's the 2 plus 3 plus 4. And then if I press a button, we go to 1. Okay? Now, where this starts to get interesting is, let's go back to the 2 to 3 to 4, pull back the heel, and then just bump this to 100. Now I'm going to change the heads. Stick on a clone. Quite cool. So then if we want to, with the expression switch, we can then play around with the tape. Okay. What's interesting is I'll get to the clone settings in a moment. When we go between the one head and the several heads, listen, we're on the several heads now with the feedback where they are, and then we go to one head and it gives us so much more. It's crazy. Anyway, so we're going to come out of there. Didn't change anything, did I? Oh, let's just show you the clone first. I think it's a clone I put in here. Yeah, so we've got the Centaur. We've got the drive up at around 75. Typically, that's where where it would start to kick in on a Centaur, if I understand right. I've brought the tone up a bit to 10. Got the level at 52. 0 on the bass and 2 of my dry mix coming through. Okay, so there's my medium gain. Gain put up to about 9. Okay, so that's what we've got going on in here. I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to save that patch like that, and now we'll go to look at the first of the stereo patches, where with any luck I can get this video finished in under 40 minutes for you. So we don't need to talk about EQ because all the same EQ things are happening, but in the amp and the effects there's different things happening. So in the next 2 patches we're running a stereo where I'm running 2 amps, where I have the option to have amp A, amp B, which is dialed in the same way, more or less. We'll get to that in a minute. I can have both, or I can have one or the other separated left, right. Okay, so it's quite flexible, quite nice. And if you dial these in right, you can have 1 amp for your rhythm and 1 amp for your lead, and balance them in a way. And what do I mean by that is I've actually got them so they're more or less at the same level. Okay, so here you'll notice about 60. The gains in this patch are a bit lower at 50. The sag is in the middle. All right. Now here we've actually go between a medium and a low gain stage. So we've got, let's pull that pot up. Okay, so they're the 2 stages, and nothing here changes. This all remains the same. So I've got the presence at 6, trebs on 63, 66, 47 is that. Yeah, with our page here like this. But on the other amp, what I'm doing is I'm just pushing the mids more, dropping off a bit of the bass, dropping off on a bit of the highs, and keeping the presence about the same. And what this does is I have to drop the level of the amp a bit because obviously mids poke through a bit more, but it gives you 2 slightly different shapes, and in slightly higher gains means you've got an amp that will poke through a mix if you want for a solo. Does that make sense? And one that's more focused for a rhythm. So that's the strategy I'm taking with those. Now the wets in here will be the same for every patch 2 across all of the amps. The same as patch 1 really, in that we've got the same effects going on for every patch 2 and the same for patch 3. So in here I'm using the spring reverb again, but here we've got control over the time, and over here I'm using the space echo. Now I've got it set to a time here that doesn't change, but the feedback I can have more or less of. So for example, if we go to, let's say, an amp over there, stick on some wet. Although I'm playing the part in the left, you're hearing the overspill of the delays all around us because we're in stereo, okay? So let's come back up the middle and increase the feedback so I can have it as a more atmospheric thing. And what I've done there is I've kept it all really simple here. Just be mindful of your high cut here. Got the level at 50. Only a touch of modulation, no ducking. We're a dry setting, a bit of your ducking. We're in the 2 to 3. Then that goes into an XOD. Now I might change this in a future session because I've got a CE1 here, and we could crank this preamp to get distortion, move this down the front of the chain and experiment with it. Maybe create an angry driver using this patch. So what I'm thinking, maybe, yeah, let's see how we get on. Maybe angry driver would be better for the Fender amps because we can already get a kind of Marshall-ish type tone from a Vox. Now, yeah, so this CE1 has got the dry level coming through in the middle, and we're in the middle on the effect as well, and depth up it, and there's your rate. All right, that, as I say, goes into the compressor, same as before. Okay. Now we do have some wets that I turned on a minute ago, where we've got a chorus here after the amp and an auto wah, but we're going to save that for the next jam in the second session. In this one, we're going to be using the fuzz. So let's just turn those delays off. Where in here I've got a 60s fuzz, again at 200. The same thing happening here, and it's funny, interesting, I ended up at the same place on the tone part. I've only just noticed that. Interesting. But got the level up at 80 here, and I like to bump the bottom a bit on the fuzzes, by the way. Got a +2 on the dry mix coming through there, alright? So there's that patch. Then the second stereo patch, so the fourth patch that we're looking at, is the same in terms of principle of EQ and amp, but I've got the gains cranked to 120. But I much prefer 100, but I've already got a high gain at 100, so it might be worth just trying 110 as a starting point. Just so it's got a little bit of difference between what's happening in the patch ones. So, but I am cranking the sag. The resonance the same. Levels just dropped off a little bit to 58 or 59. But the thing to notice is, again, there'll be a level difference here where the mids get pushed on this side. Okay, so this one will be slightly lower. Now, remember in the Plexi it was quite a big difference, but in the Vox it's not so much of a difference. Now here I'm doing the same thing. Look, there's nothing changing, nothing exciting. You don't need to make your life more complicated to get what you need. Now this patch can be used in a couple of ways. Like I say, I can use it and play in the parts in stereo, but if you hold on to your hats for a second, I'm just going to bring in some bass and drums, and I'll play in a lick with the beats and use it in the stereo. Okay, so we can kind of, it's quite a nice patch for just if you want to go stereo and then sling yourself up the middle of that, you can. Now here we've got, sorry, before I head off, we have a medium gain going to high gain. Put on the verbs. Now I've got a very subtle verb on that is just the hall, but I can extend it. Again, your high and low cuts are really important, and then make the most of the frequencies that you're left behind using your high and your low down is my best advice. But next to that we have delays in the form of, so let's bring back the feedback on the reverb and the delay. And here we've got a reverse delay that you can hear has already picked up the end of my note there. And there I've just caught the end of my note, and what I can do now is disengage from that delay. And it's quite nice being able to play around with atmosphere as a live looper in this way, effects and sounds. So let's get that to fade off. Let's bring ourselves back up the middle. We've got a phaser in here as well. Nice. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I can't remember, did I change anything? I don't think I did. The last patch, we don't even need to go into it too deeply. I just want to show you here at the end that we're split going out to 2 notes. We've got the wets coming out as we were, and it's exactly the same as patch 1. You even saw me change the gain from 120 to 100 there. Let's pull that gain pot back up. What we might do is let's get to our Bindrum, let's pull out the camera and try and get this finished before 40 minutes. Okay, going to try and keep the loops short and sweet. We're going to sound check the different things with some loops. Let's what do I want? Let's go low gain with a bit of compression. So this is the one where I've got control over the feedback. I'm going to increase the feedback. Stick on that fuzz, some wets. Change up that. Gotta pull back my gain pot a bit. Hang on. Yeah, let's do that. If I play it right. Oh, dear me. I'm so sorry. But we need to stay on track. I'm going to go for it. You know, it is always embarrassing when you play something badly, particularly in front of people who are probably better than you. So I'm not going to worry about that too much. We're going to go straight to the boss patch. We're going to engage the high gain, the treble boost. The verb is on. We're going to set the compressor on. Back pickup. Okay, now we're going to take off the compression, take off the verb, just come in nice and dry. Okay, now we're going to do exactly the same thing using two notes. That sounded wicked, by the way, in the room. It sounded really good. Where am I in the 80s? Wicked. Where did that come from? Let's get going. Here we go. Disengage from the wets. I think I'm going to stick on the blues driver. So we're on a medium driven gain now. Okay, guys, I had a bit of a glitch with my back there. I need to stop the session, but fortunately, we're at 40 minutes. Yeah, hopefully that's sounding good. I think what I'm going to try doing is just before I go, I just want to hear one round of each, or maybe 2 rounds of each. Let's start off with the high gain and the treble boost on the back pickup with the, sorry, my brain's malfunctioning now, the 2 notes, and then we'll do exactly the same thing with GT. So 3, 4. Okay, so for me in the room, they both sounded really good. There's a lot of guitars at the very beginning when I press start. You know, you've got the 2 harmonies, you've got the one coming up in the middle that makes that whole group, and then you've got the electric ones either side, and then this is coming up in the middle, and I could still hear all of the guitar parts in the room. Hopefully that comes across on YouTube. Yeah, I enjoyed that. Didn't make my 40-minute target though. #fail. Catch you later. Bye.